just in time as always. Settle in, tuck that blanket up just so, and listen closely. Tonight's story is a slightly spooky one, but don't worry, I'll stay with you till the end. Tonight's tale is called The Man at the End of Ember Lane. Outside the fading sunlight, Marrow Hill settled into its evening hush. Cobblestone streets, warmed by centuries of footsteps, glowed amber beneath the lampposts, their glass panes etched with the soft fingerprints of countless dreamers who strode home to warm hearths. Ember Lane, the narrowest and most winding path of the town, lay tucked between two broader avenues named Birch and Ash. Its bricks were ancient, each one a memory pressed into clay, polished smooth by time and careful steps. No map marked Ember Lane. Residents simply knew it by the curve of its streetlights and the hush that fell whenever one turned its corner. At the very end of that lane stood a house unlike any other in Marrow Hill, taller by 2 stories than its neighbors. It leaned forward ever so slightly, as though craving the glow of the street lamps. Its bricks were a darker shade, deep russet kissed by soot, and ivy curled lazily up one side, tendrils probing windowsills as if seeking whispered secrets. 2 ground floor windows remained perpetually dark after dusk, curtains drawn tight, promising quiet privacy to whatever dwelled within. Yet the attic window, a small crescent-shaped pane set in leaded glass, glowed each night with a warm flicker of a single candle. That glow never dimmed, not for rain or wind or seasons passing, as if some quiet watcher always kept vigil. No one could quite recall when the man moved in. One day Ember Lane lay empty at twilight, and the next, beneath the attic's crescent glow, a tall figure in a long coat stood on the front stoop, hat brim low, eyes hidden in shadow. He carried nothing, no bags, no books, no visible luggage, only an air of gentle expectancy, as if he'd arrive precisely when he meant to. Children caught glimpses of him through dim windows, a solitary silhouette bathed in candlelight, standing motionless, his coat brushing the threshold's edge. They said the lantern seemed to bow ever so slightly as he passed, and that leaves swirled in patterns around his feet, though there was no breeze. Word spread quietly, polite whispers trailing through the lane like the scent of lavender. Neighbors peered through windows, exchanged uncertain smiles, and then returned to evening routines. Life on Ember Lane felt nearly unchanged. Dinner still simmered on stoves, shutters banged on windy nights. Cats pursued moths beneath doorsteps. Yet something shifted in the air, a faint expectation, a gentle hush that made footsteps sound crisper, words linger longer, hearts listen more carefully. Mrs. Edna Breckett, whose rose-trimmed porch sat 2 doors down, was first to speak to him, one dusk. She set out a teacup of chamomile on her railing and ventured to the edge of her garden. "Good evening, sir," she called softly, brushing a stray wisp of silver hair behind her ear. The stranger raised a gloved hand in polite greeting. He lowered his hat, revealing a face as lined and calm as well-worn leather. "Good evening, madam," he replied, voice low, like wind through dry leaves. "Your chrysanthemums are exquisite." Edna blinked, studying the garden. She hadn't planted chrysanthemums this year. She favored daisies and dahlias, but there they were, blooms of soft gold and deep burgundy nodding gently. "They planted themselves," she murmured, half to herself. "How peculiar." The stranger smiled faintly, tipping his hat. Some gardens remember what's needed. He turned and walked on, stepped silent on the bricks. Edna retreated inside, heart fluttering as though she dreamed, but in the dim light, the chrysanthemums still glowed. On her front stoop lay a small folded note. "May your days bloom kindly." The man at the end. Next door, the twins Lucy and Tom choreographed an elaborate hopscotch course, chalking broad outlines that curled across the pavement like streamers. As they scrawled the final square, a hush fell, and when they pushed aside to glimpse their handiwork, the chalk had vanished. In its place lay a neat row of pebbles, each painted with a different symbol: a star, a raindrop, a small moon. Lucy nudged the first pebble, and it rolled gently into Tom's shoe. He looked down, stones clicking softly against rubber. They glanced toward the stranger, who stood beneath the nearest lamp, coat sleeves brushing the metal post, eyes tilted upward as if studying constellations only he could see. "Hide and seek," Lucy whispered, Gripping Tom's hand, the stranger nodded once, then receded into shadow, leaving only the faint echo of footsteps that seemed to come from places both nearby and impossibly far. The twins spent the rest of twilight chasing one another beneath lamplight, but the pebbles remained, arranged in patterns they couldn't quite solve. At bedtime, they tucked the stones into a small box on their bedside table, certain that each night the box would hold new pebbles and each morning that it would rest quietly empty. The mailman, Mr. Pritchard, noticed next. He delivered letters to Ember Lane every evening before sunset. Bills, postcards, holiday cards addressed to lonely houses. One evening, he paused at the peculiar house's door. He'd never received mail there, but could not resist sliding a telegram through the slot. It bore only 2 lines. Attend to lost voices. The man at the end. He tapped and hurried on. Inside, no paper fluttered in any corner. The telegram lay settled on a rug, crisp and unremarkable. Yet at dawn, Mr. Pritchard's route included a letter addressed to himself, penned in his own handwriting, dated 30 years earlier. You did well. Keep delivering kindness. He found himself unable to recall ever writing it, yet felt compelled to file it carefully among his other mail. And then there was Eleanor Finch, who had lived on Ember Lane longer than anyone. Long before brick gave way to pavement, long before street lamps glowed golden at dusk. She remembered when the lane was only wilderness, when a winding footpath led travelers through holly and oak to the great town beyond. She remembered nights camped beneath trees, summers chasing fireflies in the hush of moonlight on sleeping earth. One evening, Eleanor, frail in her rocking chair, heard a gentle knock at her door. She rose slowly, cane tapping against the floor. As she opened the door, the stranger stood there, coat collar turned up, hat brim lowered so that only his mouth showed, a quiet smile etched in shadow. "Miss Finch," he said softly, voice like a distant lullaby. "It's been longer than I dared to imagine." Eleanor's breath caught. She'd spoken aloud only to memories, to moths fluttering by lamplight. She recognized that voice, as though it had hummed in the breeze of her childhood. "Has it?" she whispered, voice trembling. He stepped aside, revealing a lantern he did not carry. Its light glowed behind him, casting no shadow. "It's good to see you." She studied him, searching lines in his face that echoed her own years. When she spoke again, her words carried the weight of decades. "I thought the world had forgotten." "Not when someone remembers," he replied gently. "Shall I come in?" Eleanor nodded. Inside, the parlor felt warmer than she expected, scented with lavender sachets she tucked in drawers. The fireplace was cold, but moonlight sifted through curtained windows, painting silver stripes on patterned carpet. They sat facing one another in rocking chairs, hers draped in a crocheted shawl, his soft as midnight. For a long while, they did not speak. Outside, wind rustled leaves. Somewhere distant, an owl called once. At last, Eleanor cleared her throat. "Do you remember the footpath?" He nodded, gaze distant. "I walked it when it was new." She smiled, leaning forward. "And I chased fireflies there. You always caught them before I could." He returned her smile with a faint lift of one corner of his mouth. "I was younger then." They spoke of summers Eleanor believed she'd lost. Days of bare feet and honeyed sunlight, nights of campfire songs and distant laughter. They spoke of winters when lantern light flickered on frost-scored windows, and of springs when wildflowers bloomed in the field, now paved with bricks. When conversation dwindled, Eleanor rose, cane in hand. She retrieved a small wooden box from a shelf. Opening it, she revealed several yellowed notes, messages she'd written to herself when heart ached or joy brimmed too full. She handed the box gently to the stranger. He accepted it as though it were the most precious gift. "Thank you," he whispered. Eleanor nodded, settling back into her chair. "You always remember," she said softly. "Never let that go." The stranger's gaze was steady. "I won't." When he left, no footprints marred the floor. No lamp flickered. But on Eleanor's mantel, where the box had rested, lay a single folded note. "Thank you for remembering." The man at the end. Eleanor smiled, closing her eyes. She rocked gently for a while, hands folded, shawl warming her lap. When the morning sun filtered through her window, she was gone, left only a photograph of her and a childhood friend, perched on the hearth, and a lingering scent of lavender. By the time dawn broke, every household on Ember Lane had felt the stranger's quiet touch, blossoms blooming at unexpected moments, chalk replaced by painted stones, notes appearing in crannies, memories stirred from long sleep. And though he remained unseen most days, the lane pulsed with the warmth of shared recollection. Neighbors greeted one another softly, glances carrying unspoken thanks. Children played beneath lamplight, but stepped lightly, careful not to disturb fragile moments of wonder. First, the stranger arrived like a whisper under a candlelit window. Next, he offered gentle prompts and gifts. Then, he drew forth memories long forgotten, sewing them into the present. And now, Sam Atlee, the town librarian, was a fixture in Merrow Hill long before memories began to shift on Ember Lane. He preferred the hush of stacks to the chatter of streets, often lingering past closing time to trace the spines of forgotten manuscripts or to muffle a late cough among yellow pages. He lived alone in a small flat above the library, where a single lamp burned through most nights, casting soft pools of amber light across his cluttered desk. His life followed a gentle rhythm, cataloging new arrivals by day, returning home by the lane's lamplight, and falling asleep to the quiet hum of distant traffic and the occasional sigh of wind through the eaves. One rainy afternoon, just as the clouds gathered their first dark notes, Sam noticed something curious. A paperback returned by Mrs. Breckett, a collection of short stories, bore no checkout slip. He leaned back in his chair and flipped through the pages. There, nestled between chapters 3 and 4, he found a small folded piece of parchment. His name was written on it in ink, so fine it trembled like a raindrop on a leaf. Intrigued, he unfolded it gently, careful not to tear the fragile fibers. The note read simply, "Mind the storm." No signature, no flourish, just those 3 words, spaced as though each carried its own echo. Sam frowned, glancing at the window where rain began to drizzle against the glass. It was only a gentle mist, barely enough to darken the pavement. Yet the note's warning felt urgent, like a whisper in his ear. He tucked the parchment into his pocket and closed the returned book, pausing for a moment as the overhead fluorescent lights hummed softly. The library's hush felt too still, as though the walls themselves had overheard secrets they dared not speak aloud. That evening, long after the library had locked its doors and the last stray patrons had gone home, Sam stepped into the rain. He carried only a simple umbrella and the weight of the note's quiet admonition. Each street lamp he passed cast a halo of light that blurred the edges of falling droplets, and the bricks underfoot shone like polished onyx. He walked the full length of Ember Lane, checking doorsteps for another hint, scanning windows for signs of life beneath drawn curtains. The rain tapped a gentle rhythm on his umbrella, a lullaby urging him onward. Halfway down the lane, where new bricks met ancient ones and seemed nearly invisible to hurried eyes, Sam paused. There, illuminated by a single lamp's glow, stood the stranger. His coat was damp in places, but no drop of water lingered on his shoulders or hat brim. He gestured toward a small gap in the fence that led into a forgotten courtyard, where citrus trees grew wild and lanterns hung like captive stars. "I wonder if you'd come," the stranger said, voice soft like wind through corn stalks. Sam nodded, uncertain whether to be surprised or relieved. "Your note, mind the storm. I thought it just rained softly." The stranger's lips curved into a knowing smile. Storms come in many forms. Some drip steadily for days, others build and break. Tonight's is simple enough, but it demands attention. Sam followed him through the gate, where rain did not fall at all. The courtyard remained perfectly dry, lantern light drifting in gentle spirals. A single oak table sat beneath a canopy of glossy leaves, and upon it lay a small wooden box carved with swirling patterns, waves and raindrops folding into one another. The stranger placed the box in Sam's hands. "Open it," he said. Inside, Sam found a silver key, its teeth shaped like tiny books on a shelf. Beneath the key lay another note, more elaborate this time. "For the chest that holds our origins. Turn the key and let voices awaken." Sam's breath caught. He knew of only one chest in Marrow Hill that might match such a description, an ornate wooden chest locked since the library's founding, hidden in a corner of the archives room. Its contents rumored to hold letters, journals, and maps dating back to town's earliest days. The stranger faded into the shadows of the courtyard, leaving Sam to consider the key's cool weight. He returned down Ember Lane with cautious steps, his mind humming as rain began again. Gentle at first, then building in confidence until it tapped insistently on rooftops and turned the cobblestones slick. The next morning, Sam arrived early at the library, heart hammering with anticipation. Under the glow of the reading lamps, he found the archives room door unlocked as though expecting him. The air inside smelled faintly of cedar and aged parchment. There, in the farthest corner, stood the chest, a broad, low treasure polished oak bound with iron straps and engraved with the library seal. He knelt and slid the silver key into the lock. It fit perfectly, turning with a soft click. The lid lifted easily as though it, too, had been waiting patiently. Inside lay manuscripts wrapped in brittle cloth, leather-bound folios, and yellowed envelopes sealed with red wax. Sam untied the cloth bundle first. It contained a stack of journals, the first penned by a woman named Hannah Marrow, one of the town's founders. Her handwriting was spidery but legible, recounting her journey across wild fields, her hopes for a community that will remember kindness, and the birth of her son beside the new hearth. Next, he opened an envelope addressed to future keepers of memory. Inside were letters from other settlers. Thomas Redding's account of surviving a bitter winter, Eleanor Marrow's lullabies sung to her children, and Jonas Pike's sketches of first blossoms planted in what would become Elm Park. Each page glowed softly in the lamplight, as if the ink still held the warmth of those long-gone hands. Sam read for hours, forgetting the rain that drums in the sky above. He read of laughter around campfires, of midnight vigils under star-bright skies, of quiet prayers offered at dawn. He found a map marking an old spring that no longer flowed, and a recipe for sweetbread baked on ceremonies to welcome newcomers. He discovered that Ember Lane had once been home to a tapestry-making guild, where neighbors wove stories together in colored threads. He realized that the lane's heartbeat had always been memory, stitched across generations in everyday acts of care. As twilight approached, Sam closed the chest and replaced its contents carefully. He stepped outside and found neighbors gathering by the library steps. Word had spread, journals opened, voices remembered. Families, children, elders, and travelers stood beneath lanterns strung between lampposts, faces upturned to catch the first drops of evening rain. Sam climbed the library stone steps and tapped the old brass bell above the door. Its tone rang through the courtyard. "Please," he called, voice warm against the hush, "come inside and listen." One by one, they entered the reading room, umbrellas dripping at the threshold. Chairs were arranged in a semicircle around a low table, where Samuel laid out the journals and letters. He read aloud Hannah Marrow's words, her voice crisp yet tender, describing the sight of sunrise over untamed fields. He recited Thomas Redding's winter tale, the audience warming to the crackle of imagined fires. Listeners held fingers pressed to their lips, leaning close to the glow of the reading lamps. Outside, rain fell in a gentle tapestry of sound, soft enough not to interrupt, insistent enough to accompany the voices of the past. When the reading concluded, the hush lingered as neighbors exchanged glances heavy with newfound wonder. Children asked questions, elders shared their own recollections, and strangers from distant places were welcomed by name. In the weeks that followed, Ember Lane transformed. Lanky ivy on brick walls curled into shapes suggesting letters, prompting neighbors to gather and decipher their messages. Bakers discovered old recipes in the journals and offered fresh bread at communal tables. Gardeners planted wildflowers once sketched by Jonas Pike, and they bloomed in riotous color along the lane's curve. Even the rain seemed more attentive, pausing at doorways and murmuring secrets as droplets slipped along windowsills. Sam continued his stewardship. Each dusk, he found another key-shaped gift, sometimes a silver quill, sometimes a pressed flower in a velvet cage. Each gift came with a note, for the voices not yet heard. He added each new treasure to a small display in the library foyer, where passers-by paused to read inscriptions and left messages of their own. travelers arrived, drawn by rumors of a lane that listened. Some came to heal old wounds, others to share stories they'd long forgotten. A young musician, hearing a lullaby in the journals, played it beneath lantern light, and a hush fell so perfect that even the rain seemed to pause. A painter found wildflowers in bloom and captured them in strokes of lavender and gold. An elderly couple, guided by a note slipped beneath their door, danced under dripping eaves to a song recalled from childhood. Ember Lane's gentle magic rippled outward. Neighbors saw their own kindnesses multiply. Invitations to share tea, notes of thanks tucked in pantry jars, lanterns hung along stone walls for no reason other than to brighten dark nights. The lane itself felt alive, a quiet organism of memory and grace, nourished by every handwritten note and every shared smile. And still, each evening at the lane's end, the house under the crescent window glowed with unspoken promise. Though no figure was ever seen entering or leaving, its presence pulsed in the rhythm of the rain, the bloom of late-season chrysanthemums, and the hush that settled whenever someone whispered, "I remember." Then, as Ember Lane settled into its newfound rhythm of memory and quiet magic, Sam Utley found his nightly walks taking him down familiar brick pathways with a growing sense of purpose. He no longer merely passed the crescent-windowed house at the lane's end. Instead, he climbed its narrow front steps and slipped inside without hesitation. The door, worn smooth by time, opened at his touch as though expecting him. He carried in one hand a lantern that gleamed like captive moonlight, and in the other, the silver key the stranger had entrusted to him long ago. Upstairs, the attic lay hushed and waiting. Moonlight filtered through the crescent glass, painting the dust motes in lazy dancers across the floor. There, on a simple wooden table, rested the leather-bound book with silvery vine and raindrop embossing. Pages once blank now fluttering softly as though welcoming a new breeze of stories. Sam set down his lantern and opened the book. Blank pages stared back, pristine and patient. He dipped a pen into a small inkwell he found beside the book, its black surface curved like an oyster shell, and began to write. His hand moved carefully, scripting the events that had shaped Ember Lane. The stranger's candlelit vigil, Mrs. Breckett's self-seating chrysanthemums, the twins' hopscotch of painted stones, Eleanor Finch's farewell gift of memory. Each entry wove together the threads of individual recollections, binding them into a tapestry that pulsed with the warmth of shared experience. When the pen paused, Sam looked at the page and saw that the letters glowed faintly under the moon's eye, as though the book itself approved of the act of remembering. He closed the book gently, laying it flat so the spine bore the weight of all who would follow. Then he placed the silver key atop the cover and descended the attic stairs, each creak beneath his careful footfall echoing like a heartbeat in the house's silent corridors. Armed with the book and key, Sam returned to the lane that night and stopped at the Breckett porch. He slipped a folded page under Mrs. Breckett's door, a page describing how kindness could blossom without tending, much like her mysterious chrysanthemums. Across the way, he tucked another page beneath a loose brick in the twins' hopscotch path, promising them that imagination itself was a legacy worth preserving. And at Eleanor Finch's old doorstep, now occupied by a young family, he left a page recounting her tales of moonlit footpaths and firefly games, urging them to listen for echoes of her laughter in summer nights. Morning dawned to the rustle of eager hands, unfolding Sam's notes. Mrs. Breckett found her chrysanthemums blooming in new patterns, nodding at her with messages of gratitude. Lucy and Tom discovered tiny chalk drawings of constellations lining their hopscotch stones. Each one mapped the stories they'd yet to hear. The Finch family, poring over the page, gathered their children beneath the attic window, pointing to its crescent shape as they read aloud the memory of a game played long ago. As weeks turned into months, Sam developed a quiet routine. By dusk, he climbed to the attic, added a new memory or two to the book, and distributed its pages to waiting doorsteps. The book's entries grew richer and broader. An account of Mr. Pritchard's childhood delight at delivering handwritten letters, a poem by the town's late schoolteacher about the first snowfall, a baker's recipe for gingerbread that once warmed the hands of weary travelers. Each page bore the hand of Sam's steady pen but carried the voices of many, a chorus of past and present weaving through Ember Lane like threads of silver. Neighbors began to leave their own contributions. A gardener pressed wildflower petals between heavy folios and slipped them into Sam's mailbox. A seamstress embroidered tiny symbols onto scrap cloth and left them at the library's front desk. Children drew sketches of moonlit trees and hid them among the pages of the leather-bound book, where they taught the story of hope to every reader who turned the page. In this way, the book became not only a vessel but a living participant, a keeper of lore and a maker of new moments. Travelers, too, arrived on Ember Lane, drawn by word of mouth and the soft hum of its legend. They came seeking solace, adventure, or simply the comfort of a town that remembered. A photographer wandered the bricks at dawn to capture the misty glow of lanterns. A musician played a violin beneath the attic window, coaxing old lullabies from memory. An elderly widow, carrying a silver locket from her youth, found a folded note on her seat in the blooming garden. Your heart's song still echoes here. Each visitor added a page, some writing in shaky cursive, others drawing in trembling charcoal strokes, each leaving behind a gift for Sam to weave into the grand tapestry. Ember Lane blossomed under these soft transformations. Porches glowed with lanterns strung between posts, painting the night in gentle gold. Garden gates opened wide to welcome newcomers who arrived on foot or by carriage, each greeted by neighbors offering tea and stories. The rain, once fallible and fickle, settled into patterns that felt choreographed. Taps against rooftops like applause, drizzles to usher visitors along, mist to cloak partings and mystery. Even the bricks themselves seemed to hold music, humming faintly under passing feet. Decades unfurled like pages in a well-read book. Sam's hair silvered, his back stooped with age, but his eyes remained bright, reflecting each lantern's glow and every candle's flame. He still climbed to the attic each night, though the stairs protested with creaks louder than before. The leather-bound book grew thicker, its silhouette heavier with manuscripts and memories. The silver key's edges wore smooth under his fingers. Over time, the mantle of memory keeper passed gently to a new volunteer each year, a seamstress, a teacher, a baker, each learning Sam's quiet practice. Write from the heart, lead with care, and trust that kindness endures. On Sam's 70th birthday, the entire lane gathered beneath the lantern-lit archway where Birch and Ember met. They presented him with a quilt woven from pages of the book, each square of memory stitched in glowing thread. Sam, overwhelmed, traced the words with tears in his smile, warmed by the knowledge that his work had become their shared treasure. Yet, even as Ember Lane thrived, the sanctuary it offered was not meant to remain hidden forever. Letters reached Sam from far beyond Merrow Hill. Townsfolk seeking guidance, writers hoping to learn the art recollection, dreamers yearning for places that treasured memory. Sam responded with kindness, sending a single page from the leather-bound book to each correspondent, instructing them to begin their own lantern-lit lane of remembrance. In doing so, he seeded small sanctuaries of memory in distant hamlets and cities, each inspired by Ember Lane's gentle magic. As the lane's reputation grew, so did the quiet expectation of something extraordinary. Travelers would stand beneath the crescent attic window at dusk, waiting for the candle's glow to appear. And every evening it shone, as though to say, all is well. Lanterns flickered along the curving bricks, each light warding off forgetfulness. Shopkeepers closed their doors early to join the nightly ritual of sharing new pages. Families broke bread together under strings of lanterns, and artists painted murals of dancing raindrops and softly sleeping children. In the heart of it all, Sam remained both steward and student, writing entries one night, receiving hidden notes the next, distributing memories one sunset, gathering new stories by candlelight the following dawn. The attic became a sacred chamber where the present touched the past, and the future unfolded in neat paragraphs. The silver key, though old and tarnished, still clicked in locks that guarded more than old chests. It unlocked doors and hearts, opening chambers of emotion long closed. Through it all, the stranger's influence pulsed quietly beneath the surface. Though he was seldom seen, his gentle guidance echoed in every page turned, every kindness offered, every memory shared. Some swore they glimpsed a silhouette among the trees beyond the lane's end, or heard his voice carried on the wind, reminding listeners, remember. Others felt his presence in the hush after a page was read, in the soft exhale of the rain-slicked bricks, in the hush of midnight, when memories stirred like living things. Then, on a night when the moon hung low and heavy with promise, Sam climbed the attic stairs one last time. The lantern trembled in his hand as he opened the leather book, now bursting with more stories than its binding seemed able to contain. He wrote a final entry, his handwriting slower but surer. To all who have come here seeking memory and left with hope, hold this lane in your heart and pass its light on. Our shared past is the path to a kinder tomorrow. He closed the book, kissed its cover, and tucked the silver key into his coat pocket. As he descended, a hush fell over the house, a profound silence that spoke of endings and beginnings intertwined. And when he reached the bottom step, the front door swung open of its own accord, sending a golden glow out into the night. Sam stepped into the lane, lantern carried high, and paused beneath the crescent window's soft light. In that moment, he felt the pulse of every memory held there, every story entrusted to him. He nodded once, to the lane, to the past, to the future, and walked on, lantern guiding him toward the path where new stewards waited in the hush. Old age visited Sam Atlee as gently as memory itself, settling into his bones like a well-loved melody. His hair, once darkened by midnight reading lamps, had turned pure silver. His steps, once brisk and curious, slowed to patient plods along Ember Lane's polished bricks. Yet in his eyes still shone the lantern's glow, an unquenchable spark born of nights spent cataloging the human heart. On the eve of his 82nd birthday, Sam felt a familiar tug at twilight, an echo of the initial summons that had drawn him beneath the crescent window so many years before. He closed the library door behind him, careful not to disturb the hush of slumbering books, and made his way down the lane. Each lantern cast long, wavering shadows, mirroring the gentle tremor of excitement in his chest. When he reached the house at the very end, its windows all dark save the attic's crescent pane, he paused. Above, the glass glowed faintly. No candle flickered there, but light shone as though the moon itself had curved within. Sam raised his lantern and stepped onto the worn doorstep. The door opened at his touch, revealing the familiar silence of the threshold. Inside, the house felt alive with stories. Each floorboard seemed attuned to his footfall. The walls resonated with whispered echoes of laughter, song, and gentle tears. He climbed the narrow staircase to the attic, the lantern's beam dancing across framed mementos, a chipped teacup, a smooth pebble, the twins' hopscotch stones, Eleanor's wooden box, the library chest forged iron latch, and at last, the leather-bound book resting on the central table. Sam approached the book with reverence. Its cover was worn, edges frayed, yet the silver vine and raindrop embossing still caught the light. He set down his lantern and placed a weathered hand upon the volume. For a moment, he closed his eyes and breathed deeply, absorbing the essence of every story it contained. Voices of settlers and neighbors, travelers and children, all woven into a single tapestry. He opened the book and found a fresh page waiting at the end. The quill he used trembled slightly when he dipped into the inkwell, its surface chipped with age, but still holding enough ink to trace final words. His handwriting, though slower now, remained steady and clear as he inscribed, "To the steward who follows me. This book holds the lifeblood of a lane that remembers. In its pages live the hearts of those who once walked these bricks, the laughter of children under lantern glow, the tearful joy of reunited friends, and the unwavering comfort of kind words shared in storm or calm. Guard these memories tenderly. Add your own words with gentle care. Know that every story entrusted here becomes part of our lineage, a beacon for those who seek to remember. May Ember Lane's light guide you always, and may you carry its warmth into every darkened corner of the world. With gratitude for this sacred trust, Sam Atlee, keeper of memories." He paused, let the words settle. Then, with care, he closed the book. Stepping to the table's edge, he retrieved a slender glass hourglass from within his coat. The sand within shimmered silver. The frame was etched with vines entwined around crescent moons. He placed it beside the book and turned it over, letting the first grain slip, marking the moment of transition. At that instant, the attic filled with soft sound like distant rain, enveloping Sam in a hush so profound it felt like returning to the womb of time. From the shadows emerged a stranger, tall, thin, coat and hat as timeless as the night. No candle glowed in his hand, yet the room brightened as though lit by unseen lanterns. Sam, the stranger's voice drifted, warm as memory itself. You have done beautifully. Sam's eyes moistened. I could not have done it without you. The stranger bowed his head in acknowledgement. It was never mine, but ours, a gift shared among many. Now, the lane needs new hands and fresh pen strokes. Sam extended the silver key. The next steward will know its use. The stranger accepted the key, cradling it as one holds a fragile heirloom. He turned and approached the leather-bound book. With a careful touch, he lifted the hourglass and placed it within a hidden compartment beneath the table. A secret vault where the book and its keepers began their journey of memory. As the last grain of silver sand slid to the hourglass, the stranger spoke again. Ember Lane's magic lives in every act of remembrance. Carry it forward, that its glow might kindle other lanes and hearts. He touched Sam's shoulder, cool, comforting, and the attic seemed to pulse with life. Sam felt his strength ebb, the night air growing soft around his shoulders, as though the house itself cradled him. I am ready to rest now, Sam whispered, voice thick with emotion. The stranger offered his arm. Together they descended the staircase, two figures bound by years of shared purpose. On each landing, they paused to admire mementos of kindness. A pressed flower here, a painted stone there, a snippet of song written on scrap paper. Each a milestone in Ember Lane's storied past. At the bottom, the front door opened onto the lane where lantern glow met the soft edge of dawn. Neighbors, sensing something sacred, stood quietly in pairs or small clusters, awaiting direction in tender silence. The twins, now grown with children of their own, held painted stones in both hands. Mrs. Breckett, bent but bright-eyed, clutched a single gold chrysanthemum. The Finch family, continuing Eleanor's legacy, cradled a wooden box of their own memories. Sam and the stranger paused beneath the crescent window's glow. Sam turned to the gathered neighbors and spoke. I leave you the stories of this lane, its past, its present, and its promise. Guard them kindly, share them freely, and may your own chapters fill these pages anew. A hush settled, thick with gratitude. Then, one by one, neighbors stepped forward, offering pages they had written. Words of love, of loss, of laughter and quiet wonder. The stranger accepted each, placing them gently into Sam's outstretched hands. As the last page passed into Sam's grasp, he looked up at the stranger. It is in good hands, he said softly. The stranger nodded. Always. Then, turning to the assembled neighbors, he raised his hand in a gentle salute. Remember, he called, voice echoing in the early light. And share. The assembled crowd raised lanterns in response, the glow multiplying until it rivaled the morning sky. Then, as though following an unspoken cue, they turned and melted back into their homes, carrying memories and lanterns alike. Sam turned once more to Ember Lane, cobblestones gleaming with dew, lanterns liquefy into soft gold halos, windows uncurtained in welcome. He felt the weight of a life spent in quiet service and exhaled a contented sigh. I'll see you again, he whispered to the stranger. The stranger simply smiled and removed his hat in farewell. Then, without a sound, he stepped into an alley of shadow and vanished. Only the crescent window remained aglow, a silent sentinel over the lane's next chapter. Sam, lantern lowered, watched until the glow dimmed with the rising sun. Then he turned and walked slowly home, each step light with peace. Epilogue. In the years that followed, Ember Lane continued to thrive as a sanctuary of shared memory. New stewards took up the mantle each season, tending the leather-bound book and distributing hidden notes. Gardeners planted blossoms that spelled tender messages in petal script. Children scrawled chalk constellations beside ancient bricks. Musicians played lullabies beneath the crescent window, and travelers long past Merrow Hill's borders carried Ember Lane's quiet magic back to their own streets, sowing seeds of remembrance far and wide. And if, on a gentle night, you stroll along narrow cobblestones beneath flickering lanterns, you may glimpse a tall figure in a long coat, hat brim tilted just so, a silent witness to every act of kindness and memory. He stands beneath a crescent window, watching over a lane that remembers, ready to guide hearts toward the stories that bind us together. That's the end of tonight's tale. I hope it gave you a little chill and a lot of calm. With any luck, you're already sound asleep. Didn't even hear the ending, did you? But if you're still awake, well, how about another? Sleep well, dream better, and I'll see you next time.